Hi, this is Nick Dawson from Talkhouse, and you're listening to the latest episode of Nobody's Ever Asked Me That. It's a spin-off series of the Talkhouse podcast where I talk to filmmakers, musicians, comedians, and writers and ask them questions they've never heard before in an interview in an effort to discover a different side of them and understand them better. Today, my guest is filmmaker Charles Lane. A lot of the guests on this season of Nobody's Ever Asked Me That hold a special place in my life, and Charles Lane is no exception. His 1989 debut feature Sidewalk Stories is one of my favorite films. A silent, black and white comedy drama, it's about a destitute street artist, played by Lane himself, who takes a toddler into his care after her gambler father is killed. A funny, moving, deeply human piece of cinematic storytelling, Sidewalk Stories is a masterpiece and a true landmark film in independent cinema. After a rapturous reception at Cannes, Sidewalk Stories was released theatrically, receiving universal acclaim. The film's success led to Lane becoming the first African-American director to make a movie for Disney when the company hired him to helm the comedy thriller/race satire True Identity. However, that movie's failure to connect particularly with audiences or critics hurt Lane's career. His de facto third feature, Hallelujah, an episode of American Playhouse, followed in 1993, but he has not made a film since. I first met Charles Lane in 2017 when he was starting to plot his return to directing. He wrote a handful of pieces for Talkhouse, including a personal take on the Big Sick and interracial love, and an essay on his time making True Identity. During lockdown, he and I teamed up to do an online screening of Sidewalk Stories, followed by a Q&A led by Steve Buscemi, who first saw and fell in love with the film at its Cannes premiere. In 2024, when Talkhouse launched its own zine with their New York City issue, Lane wrote a beautiful piece looking back on his experiences during the 1977 blackout. Charles Lane is a true mensch, and we've become quite friendly, but whenever he and I talk, he's always self-deprecating and deferential, putting the focus on others. So in this conversation, I wanted the spotlight fully on him, to really make sure I got to hear his stories. Prepping for this episode, I watched all his work, starting with his heartbreaking short film A Place in Time, a precursor to Sidewalk Stories, which won him a Student Academy Award in 1977. I also read his latest feature script, Real, a comedy horror with machine gun-paced dialogue that prominently features an aging, reclusive artist reckoning with his place in the world. As I talked with Lane and learned about what makes him tick, our conversation touched on such topics as how to make high school love work with some creative scheduling, being chased by street gangs and dinosaurs, how he copes with regret, his time as a preteen pyromaniac, the places one's brain goes during a 12-minute standing ovation at Cannes, becoming a Jehovah's Witness as an act of teenage rebellion, and much, much more. So, let's get started. For whatever reason, I think of you as a very romantic person, like somebody who loves love. So, do you remember the first time that you fell in love or that you got tripped up by love?
Well, yeah, I first of all, I'm not romantic at all. I don't believe in love. I don't believe in romance. Next question, please. Oh, I'm sorry. That's I'm just lying to you. Um, the truth is, in terms of romance, yeah, I'm romantic to a large degree. I guess it hasn't really waned, but I should say that I've fallen in love, in and out of love, like many, many times in my life. The first time, I believe, with some degree of significance, would be in high school. I was a freshman, and the lady of my dreams was a senior in the public high school, which meant that I think freshmen in those days, we went to class like at 12:10 in the afternoon until 5:10 in the late
Mhm.
afternoon or early evening. The juniors and the seniors went to class like normal people, like I think 7:30, and got out of school at 12:10. And so this woman, Carmen, was Latina woman, beautiful and older than myself, and I was smitten and so happy that she gave me the time of day, and then we were in a relationship. The only problem was that By the time she got out of school, I was due to go in at 12:10, and she was out,
Uh-huh.
senior.
Yeah.
And so, how to remedy that, I was wondering, and I came up with the solution quickly. I would cut class. And I did that a lot in the 10th grade. I would show up, get the roll call, attendance. I'm here. They have like two doors in the public school generally. Yeah, it's a big classroom of like 40 kids. And I would stay. I'm not the tallest person in the world, so I would, Charles Lane present, and I would be at the back door. And a few minutes later, I would be gone and hang out with my girlfriend who was out of school. So I got left back. When I was younger, I had gotten skipped because they thought I was smart. But in the 10th grade, I was in love. However much a 10th grade could be in love. And I started cutting class. So I was left back that year. And she and I, of course, broke up after like, I don't know, 2 months. It was done. That was the first time I remember falling in what I would call love. Beyond puppy love, I would say.
Do you remember the first time that you made something that you were proud of, whether it was like something that you wrote, a drawing, or just something where you were like, you had that sense of achievement and feeling like an artist, a creative person?
Yeah, kind of, sort of. I mean, it would be a drawing actually, because I was something of a
Hmm.
visual artist, and still can put pencil to paper. But I was maybe the fifth, sixth grade, elementary school, before even going to junior high school, and I drew, I think, John Kennedy, President Kennedy, and so this must have been after the assassination, which I believe was 63. So somewhere around 64,
Yeah.
65. Yeah, and I realized, and it was pretty good. Now, I drew things prior to that, but this was a world-known person, and I did a good job, and I felt really accomplished by that end result. That was like the first thing of accomplishment that I remember, after which it became music. I used
Hmm.
to be a drummer, not incredibly good, but solid. And in high school, the high school put on a musical, and I had a drum set. My mom helped me buy a drum set, a really good drum set, not winky dink stuff, but I mean Ludwig,
Hmm.
right? Like with Ringo Starr, the Beatles had, and it had zildjian cymbals and all. And I got it for no pun intended, but I got it for a song. I got the price was really low,
Yeah.
because the person who owned the drum set, their mother had enough of them with the percussion. It's noisy, and we were living in the projects, and so were they. And so my mom let me get it. My mom was very concerned that her children not get on drugs, right? Because the neighborhood where I grew up, basically, it was pretty rough, and drugs were effusive there. So my mom, anything, so drums, sure. And my dad is like, what the fuck? What? And we're living in the projects. And the same thing happened with a pool table, an 8-foot regulation size pool table, because I wanted it. My mom let us get it. Nowhere to put it except in the middle of the living room. My dad comes home, he's freaked out about it. And yeah. And then later, of course, it was in high school, right before graduation. Well, actually, that's not true. I had made some Super 8 films because I got a camera. My dad bought me a camera. I wanted to, be a filmmaker, kind of, sort of, but I wanted a camera to make little movies because I wrote little scripts
Hmm.
and basically derivative stuff like horror stuff. Then would put on little stories for my brother, my younger brother, with paper cutouts that I drew, the likeness of the characters, be it the Wolfman or Frankenstein or Hercules or Superman, and then I would put on little like plays for him with those characters. I think I was like 13, 14 years old. My dad bought me a camera, and so then it was consistent about the storytelling thing. And by the time I got into high school, I thought filmmaking would be the way to go because it would encompass everything. If I wrote the stories, it would encompass music, more music than I could ever think of as a soundtrack, fantasy, outer space if I want. It's
Hmm.
all about the story. So I thought filmmaking was a more practical. Right? They say Capricorns are practical. Not that I believe in that stuff, but it was a more practical thing that would encompass all of the disciplines, all of the arts. So I decided to become a filmmaker. And so in high school, I made some of my first short films, and then I got admitted to State University of New York at Purchase, and then a filmmaker I became.
Do you remember the first time that, like, what was the first thing that you saw or read or experience, like a book, a film, a TV show that made you feel seen?
That's difficult. It's difficult in that I remember some of the first films that I saw, loved, meant a lot to me, that I related to, but not by way of like by proxy, by way of putting myself in that position. Or yeah, I understand that because I went through that too. Yeah, I need to give that some thought. In cinema, I don't recall that. I just recall watching a film, be it like Tiger Bay, 1959,
Hmm.
or
Right.
Hitchcock film, and just appreciating it as an audience, and like, wow, that's Mount Rushmore or the Statue of Liberty climbing. That's really, really great. But I can't think of a film right now. I'm sure it exists that I related to initially. That comes afterwards. Like especially when I see black, African American themed stories, they hit me. Like Sound of Nothing But a Man, even
Hmm.
Gordon Parks' The Learning Tree. That I related to, but I think related to in terms of seeing myself. But in terms of films that I related to outside of me, they would be the other films, like the ones I mentioned, Tiger Bay and North by Northwest, even Notorious.
Hmm.
In terms of literature and such, that would possibly be like in high school, reading some of the books that we were required to read, like Native Son,
Hmm.
Go Tell It on the Mountain. That I could relate to that because that spoke to culturally issues that I could relate to in that way. But that would probably be it. There weren't like
Yeah.
many films, my growing up, that dealt with my culture. Sidney Poitier was making, films in the early
Hmm.
60s, Lilies of the Field and so on, but there weren't many. Nothing But a Man, I saw that when I was a teenager and I understood the content of the film, but I didn't quite relate to it personally. It would be more like after I got older.
Uh, this is a question I ask people a lot, but I'm always really fascinated by people's dreams. Is there like a recent dream that you remember that you could share, or one that sort of stands out? Particularly, people also will sometimes talk about recurring dreams because obviously it's easier to retain
Yeah.
those. What comes to mind for you?
Uh, I can't really honestly say I have like recurring dreams or any thematic thing that happens. That's not entirely true. In terms of a motif and thematic stuff that recurs, my persona in the dream, and generally I'm younger than I am now, thank goodness. I'm often, no matter where, so here, this would be a recurring theme. No matter how the dream takes place, this is not all the time. This is like, you know, I would say one out of every six dreams or something. Um,
Hmm.
Somehow, even if it's like a pleasant, walk through the garden of dandelions or something, somehow it would twist, and I would be in some sort of danger that I would need to escape. So it would be like, walking through a poppy field or whatever, talking to a girl or my girlfriend, even my fiance, and then all of a sudden it would be like a dinosaur, like in the distance, coming after me and us,
Wow.
and I would have to run. Or in a garden of wonderful chrysanthemums, all of a sudden that would turn on a rooftop in the Bronx, and there would be like a gang or something chasing me, and I would have to jump from one building to the other. So many of these dreams turned into like kind of like chase scenes, basically. And
Hmm.
I would say about 90% of the time I escaped. And when I didn't escape, there would be little, face-off mouthing, oh, fuck you, and then it would stop. I don't remember anything else that happened except part two of a new story. My dreams are very fragmented, man. And sometimes I would find in some of the cases I would be running fast and I would think, I could fucking fly, and then I would like fly, and get
Hmm.
away, and then
Wow.
next dream, yeah. So there you go.
Wow.
I wonder what Freud would say about that.
Well, what do you think about that?
I think so. What I think about is that one can analyze that for whatever reason, my upbringing or where I grew up, that there is, at least in my dreams, the dramatic action-packed ones. There's a sense of peril and action and climbing down Mount Rushmore with Eva Marie Saint or something. Yeah.
What does flying feel like in your dreams?
It feels great. It feels empowering. It feels like I remember several times, like, why didn't I know this before? Why didn't I realize this before? This is fucking great. This is great. I look,
Yeah.
look how small the buildings are and stuff. Like, why did it take me so long to realize I had this power? That happens oftentimes in the dreams that I have that I take flight. It's like, why didn't I know this before?
What's the scariest thing you've ever done?
Mm. And that there are many. But one thing that comes to mind is I'm not a good swimmer. Even today, I'm
Same.
yeah, good scuba diver. If I have the fins and the mask and so
Okay.
on, I'm good at that. But in terms of just swimming and laps and all, I'm not a very good swimmer. And in junior high school, this was about the eighth grade before going to high school. During the winter time, some of my male friends would go lunchtime away from the school, and there was like a pond with a lot of ice in it. And in the semi ghetto, which is where I grew up, there weren't real like rafts, but there were these wooden planks, and for deliveries, you see the pickup truck with the prongs, and they would go into this piece of wood. On top of the wood is like cartons and stuff. Well, those wooden planks we would put in the water and have a pole to go from this plot of land here across the water to this plot of land.
Hmm.
And it was dangerous, and there was ice, broken ice, and so on, Titanic stuff, and we'd make it on the side. Nobody fell in, but I recognized, after the fact, years after the fact, that that was stupid because had I fallen in, chances are very good that I may not have made it out successfully,
Hmm.
and that's scary when I think about that. I've done some things that were scary, some that were unnecessary, and some that were necessary. And thankfully, I'm here to reminisce about it. But when I was younger, I was about 7 years old. I accidentally set my apartment, my parents, my brother, set my apartment on fire playing with matches.
Wow.
That wasn't pleasant. And I got my tail whooped for that. Um, but the thing is, with that little anecdote, I did it twice.
Wow.
It happened, because I loved playing with matches, and the matches were the old-fashioned kind. The ones they're wooden, they strike anywhere.
Yeah.
The wooden stick, and then the little red head on it.
Yeah.
And yeah, so I love those. And I, was like 6, 7 years old, so not terribly smart. So I would light the match, look at it burn, and then put it out as quickly as I could. And the burnt matchstick, this is genius I'm talking about here. The burnt matchstick, I would take it and put it under the radiator, right? And then I would do like two or three of those.
Hmm.
And then the next day, the next week, the same. So under the radiator. So when accidentally the curtains caught on fire, my heart, everything sunk, and I couldn't put it out. I was only 7 years old, you know, uh,
Hmm.
pyrotechnic, but still 7 years old. So I ran to my mom, my dad, look, 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 and how, like that, and how that happened. And then they ran the water, they put it out, and I don't know. I just saw it. I'm glad I saw it to tell you about it. Like, and then they found all of the fucking matchsticks collection that I had under the radiator. So, there was no question as to who did it. But those were scary times when you think of it. When I think of it, that could have been worse. It could have been an inferno. And it's just, precocious, stupid stuff. But that was very scary. And that was at a young age, like 6 and 7 years old. Like I said, I did twice. Have you ever set your house on fire?
No. So the story that makes me think of that's a sort of a parallel for me is when I was a kid, but maybe about the same age, probably slightly younger, maybe 4 or 5.
Hmm.
I would go with my mother to this department store, and there was a an escalator that went down to like a lower level of the store, and there was like a big red button that you pushed if like your jacket got caught or whatever in there, and you had to stop the escalator.
Right.
And you know it was big and red because you only pushed it in an emergency.
Correct.
And every time we passed it, I don't know whether I reached out or my mother saw it in my eyes or whatever. They got bigger, but she was like, "We don't push that button." And then one day, for whatever reason, I could not. It was too much for me. I pushed that big red button, and um, you know, the escalator stopped, and everybody looked at me, and my mother was mortified, and I'm not quite sure what the consequences were for me, but it was this thing of like the one thing that I'm not supposed to do.
Yeah.
It was something about that big red button. It was just for at that age, it was irresistible for me.
Absolutely. And see, part of what I think motivates, little villains like you and me is the fact that it's prohibited, and so there's a buildup. So every time you go to the store, the red button is there beckoning you. Nick, come on. I mean,
Yeah,
Nick, come on. What
yeah,
what what
yeah,
would hurt? See what happens. What's the worst that can happen? Yeah, that kind of thing. And yeah, I get it.
yeah.
And at 6, 7, 5 years old, that's a call that has to be answered in most of us
Right.
us kids, with that precocious streak in us. Yeah, I got you. I love the story. Now that I can relate to you and the escalating the red button. I can relate to that totally.
It's funny. I was rewatching Sidewalk Stories yesterday, and there's your character, the artist, and then the other artist,
Hmm.
and you're sort of
Hmm.
competing. There's a sort of quite a memorable moment where you got a flamethrower or something, or a
Yeah,
little where, and you set his
he's still on
um
fire. Yeah.
yeah, his easel on fire. Yeah, and I was just wondering whether there's any connection there, whether that impulse was brought back by having to write a story where there was this need for sort of a minor. It's a minor retribution, but it is or whatever. But
No, you're good. You're good. There yeah, there was an inkling of when I wrote it, it was just about the humor, but there was an inkling of that because I
yeah,
was aware of it after I wrote it that, oh, oh, I see. And then, but it's still funny, Oh, I see. This is something to do with my childhood and those matchsticks. And so what it was like a little torch thing that I got in the movie and
mm-hmm,
set his stuff on fire.
mm-hmm,
But I wrote it first divorced from myself. Even if it were subconscious or subliminal, I wasn't aware of it
mm-hmm.
until after I wrote it and saw it and I said, oh, uh, I used to deal with fire in my younger years,
Yeah,
that kind of thing. So it hit me after the fact.
yeah.
That's interesting. No one's, I hope you don't mind my saying, but no one's ever asked me that before.
Well, that's good. That's what we're trying to do here.
There you go. There you go.
When you think about like when you fantasize about a world or like a life outside of your own, like what is it that you picture in your head as that an idealized existence?
Uh, being incredibly wealthy, and this is not in any order, but this is
Uh-huh.
just
Sure. No,
an
no.
answer to your question. But yeah, I would love to be, I'm still striving for it, significant filmmaker, and I would love to be more than comfortably wealthy, yes, and I would love to be a musician. It's not exclusively a musician who plays an instrument, but a musician, composer who knows the different instruments and can write, compose, songs or tunes or melodies, which brings me to Sidewalk Stories and that whole thing. That was a large reflection as to who I am, and even at that time, because as I told you, I wanted to be a musician at first, and Sidewalk Stories doing a silent film, well, that has to be about music if you're going to have an original score.
Yeah.
So that fed that ambition of mine to make that film, to be a filmmaker and to make the film that relies heavily on music as dialogue, as a communicative thing beyond the
Mhm.
visual. So those would be my fantasies, and yeah, that's what I would love to do.
What role does music play in your everyday life?
Significant part of it. There are certain pieces of music that forever will be consistent in my life. Again, in no order, but there's some classical pieces that really informs who I am weekly. Beethoven being, one of the primary. And there are some jazz pieces. Ella Fitzgerald is, perennial favorite.
Hmm.
And Beatles. I love the Beatles, believe it or not. And Whitney Houston. Yeah, I love her. And
Hmm.
these pieces of music, they never leave really. They never leave. And if I'm not thinking about it at a given time or whatever, I may hear something that triggers the memory of that. So I could hear something by Brahms, and that, Brahms is cool, all respect, but that would trigger Beethoven, like Beethoven did it
Hmm.
better. Kind of for
Yeah.
me, that kind of thing.
Right.
And then like old Motown, man. I love old Motown stuff, I just love it. And what I find in some of the old Motown stuff that I grew up with is that some of the lyrics, which I knew as a kid, but some of the lyrics, as we all have done with certain songs, we screw up the lyrics because we think we heard what they're saying, and then we sometimes know that we don't have the word, but we fill it in when we're humming to ourselves. Or when I listen to some of the lyrics of some of the older Motown tunes, I realize, like, man, this is really excellent. Like, really cerebral writing in some places,
Hmm.
And then when I took it for granted, because I was more like, digging the rhythm and boogieing, and like, and like that. But
Hmm.
when I listen to some of the stuff now, I'm like, oh, that's really cool. That's really kind of sharp, man. And this is in the 60s. I mean, they knew that then, yeah, that kind of thing. And so that it's always
Yeah. Yeah.
wonderful, the discovery, or the rediscovery, but in a deeper way than what you thought you understood.
Yeah, I mean, Motown is sort of like the life. I don't know. There's a vitality and a joyfulness, which kind of leads me maybe to my next question. Where do you find, or how do you find joy and beauty in the everyday?
Uh, you know, special friends, but especially when there's not conflict or arguments, when it just flows in a nice day where things are simpatico and there's no conflict. Remember what you said yesterday? Why did you say, divorcing that? That gives me joy. Divorcing that, I'll repeat, it gives me joy to be in harmony. Um, music and moments in cinema. My kids, they're adults and they have their own lives, but I don't see them like every day. But when we do connect, it's bliss, so it's wonderful. But in terms of like a more everyday thing, it would be what I mentioned. Compatibility, music, and film, cinema. So when I think about I'll use Hitchcock as an example. When I think about 1942 Saboteur, right? A film that a lot of people
Hmm.
don't know unless you're a Hitchcock fan, but that's the one that ends on the Statue of Liberty, the climax.
Hmm.
When I think of like a few scenes, I'm just walking, minding my own business, and all of a sudden, a moment from that film may pop up. So I'll think of that. I'll think about the crop duster scene in North by Northwest. I'll think about
Hmm.
Notorious at the end of the movie, Cary Grant, Ingrid Bergman going down the stairs. I'll think about a scene from Shaft, the movie, that just comes to me, And then there's a movie, a film. This was in the what they call black exploitation. I have a problem with that term sometimes, but there's a movie called Melinda that came out in 1973, and it was an action movie with a lot of African American stars in it. But there's some moments in that movie which I just adored, and that'll come to mind. So it's like every day there's some piece of some fragmented moment in art
Hmm.
that'll hit me, you know, just arbitrarily, and that really he turns me on. That gets me fired up. I'm on a bus or on the subway. Someone will say something across to someone else, and it will remind me of, oh yeah, Quentin Tarantino. Yeah, yeah, that movie. Yeah, Pulp Fiction. Yeah, so there you go.
Can you call to mind a moment of uncomplicated happiness or contentment in your life
A moment. Oh,
where everything was just as it should be?
yeah, yeah, several moments and many moments actually. But I'll keep this. Well, when my kids were born and they were healthy,
Hmm.
crying, me cutting the umbilical cord, that was everything working out the way that it should have. And when my first feature film, Sidewalk, was looked at and respected as a success, and we went to Cannes Film Festival. We opened there and we won a prize there. That was wow. But even before that, in Cannes Film Festival, when we showed the film, we got a standing ovation. That.
Like 12 minutes,
Yeah,
was it?
yeah, 12 minutes exactly. Don't make me laugh, man. Yeah, don't take me back there, even though I started it. Yeah, that was as everything should go, and almost like an embarrassment of wealth, in that the standing ovation I didn't expect, but okay, here it is. 2 minutes would be great, but 5 minutes and six, and you're standing there and you're blowing kisses, and people. I was in a balcony, and people behind me, on the side of me, and then down below, and it became, uh, and it was kind of uncomfortable because I didn't know what to do in the 12 minutes, and it was a long, 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 long time. That was a moment where everything was just brilliant, beyond words. And yeah, beyond words because I had no words, like in the movie.
Mhm.
Yeah, that was great. And then winning the award was great.
During that ovation, do you remember where your mind was going? Like, as this was happening? Because it's presumably only so much time you can be like, well, this is amazing, and then not kind of go off in some other direction as well. Do you remember?
Yeah, I do. I remember, like I said, after minute five, being uncomfortable because it was like, am I, looking a little silly repeating the same gestures? 5 minutes, and then like, okay, this should really
Yeah,
stop now. I
yeah,
got it,
yeah.
and this is great. And then it was 6 minutes, and then the same thing, and it went on for 12 minutes, and yeah, that's where my mind went, basically like wanting it to stop. Like, okay, this is good. This is on the record. I had it. Minute five, that's great, but then there was like 7 minutes more,
Yeah,
and it was like, I would like this to stop. For real. I mean, when I think about it now, in hindsight, no, let it go on for like 15 minutes. Who cares?
yeah.
Then in the middle of it, not expecting it, um, after 5 minutes, I wanted it to stop, because I was nervously uncomfortable being there with that much affection and hardly any way to balance it, volley
Right,
it.
to respond to
Yeah,
it. Yeah,
besides doing the same thing.
yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah, 12 minutes of that, that doesn't exactly, foster a lot of like originality in response.
Right. What's your relationship with the universe? Like, what do you believe in? Like, I sort of believe in there being a force in the universe that creates life and is not necessarily random. But yeah, I'd love to know what you believe in.
Yeah, I must say that I believe in that force that you speak of, not random. I happen to call it, not him. It's not a gender. Um, it could be a female, an intersex, if you will, what they used to call hermaphrodite. I don't know. It's a force. I refer to the force as God. I'm not religious. I don't really truly believe. It's for myself. For myself, I don't
Hmm.
believe in religion. For other people, it's the way of life. It works. I get that. I respect it. For me, no. When I was younger and my parents were religious, they brought us up, some church stuff, and I believed in that. And growing up, to a fuller degree, I even decided to become a Jehovah's Witness before going to college, only out of rebelliousness, not out of real belief. The thing was,
Hmm.
because I
Hmm.
was going to college now, becoming like a young man going to a higher institute of learning. And my thing was, okay, this whole religion thing, I'm really having problems with it. When I go to college, I'm saying to myself, when I go to college, I'd like to be free. Now, either I'm going to be a man of some religion, or I'm going to be, a debaucher. I'm just going to be like, like Marquis de Sade or something. So, yeah, so how do I get the answer? I know. I'm going to join the religion that many people have a problem with, including my parents, because here was the hypocrisy for me, because religion, I find, is very divisive
Hmm.
in terms of some of the practitioners, very divisive. And so my parents, God bless them, wonderful people, religious, but not Jehovah's Witness. No, 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 we can't take them. And I'm thinking, okay, you can't take them, huh? I'm gonna become one. So that's what I did for about 8 months or so before going to college because I wanted to know
Hmm.
which way I was gonna be, the man of God or going down that other path, so to speak. And so I found this would be 1972 going to 73. And
Hmm.
I found some hypocrisy, some flaws in it, big flaws. And I said, In a way, one could say I was looking for an excuse. And one could say that.
Hmm.
I'm not saying it, but one could say Charlie was looking for an
Yeah.
excuse. And then I found the floor that said, that's it. No more religion. I'm going to college and I'm going to be me, that kind of thing.
Hmm.
And as I got older, I believe in that power, that force, that creative force. And like I said, I refer to it out of habit and so as God. And I do, have moments of meditation and privately and all, but I don't believe in religion or churches. But I have friends who do. When you come to this, we're going to have a wake or a funeral. It's going to be in a church, and that's fine. And so I respect other people's religion. Yeah, and then I got into Buddhism for a while, but that was more for a girl. That was
Mm.
more for a girl that I
Yeah.
fancied, and she was a Buddhist, and she wanted me to be. I don't want to be a Buddhist. I don't believe in. Come on. Well, just come, Charles, and try it. Okay, I'll come and try it. So tried it for a while. She and I had a good time and so on. And then no, that's not my thing. So
Hmm.
I hope I answered your question.
You did, definitely. I don't know. I'm sort of a I'm not sure if I'm a fatalist, but I'm definitely a like I catastrophize in my own head and I think about the direction we're headed in. What do you think about the end? Like how do you picture the end of the world?
I have two feelings about that. Simplistic they might be, but I think that part of me thinks that it's impossible. No, there's no end of the world. It goes on. It's going to go on. It always has. Then I understand that things have changed, that there have been certain life forms on this very planet of ours that are now extinct for different reasons.
Hmm.
Why can't those things in another form happen again to wipe out? Now, too, politically, our societies are much more advanced with tools of mass destruction. So that wasn't the case in the prehistoric ages. With dinosaurs, it was more, like the Great Flood or the other catastrophes that really fucked up the planet and so on. And the other side is like, no, we're too intelligent. We know much more now in terms of the environment and taking care of it. We know what the downfalls are, but do we? Because when you say it's a hoax, and when you say there is no with
Yeah.
climate change, violent change, when you have that kind of an attitude, yeah, destruction is possibly right around the corner. So I guess I'm kind of where you are, but I do have hope. There is a part of me that says no. Ultimately, the forces of good and wisdom and intelligence will overtake that stupidity and preserve some sort of a safety net for future generations. So I'm in both places, is what I'm trying to say in a word.
So yeah, there's a line in your screenplay for Real where the sort of the elderly artist character Sorokin says, "I'd make a deal with Satan for only a few moments to work with filmmakers like Nigel Amumin, Spike Lee, Nima Barnett, Mira Nair, Jafar Panahi, James Wan, Ryan Coogler, Justin Simeon, Darnell Martin, Cheryl Dunye, Charles Lane, whatever happened to him, Shatara Michelle Ford, Wayne Wang, Barry Jenkins, Julie Dash, Gina Prince Bythewood, Ava DuVernay, and Shaka King, all of whom have statements of consequence to make. How I wish I could have been a small part of their clan. Cherish what is now. Regrets are a toxic possession."
Yeah.
That felt very, very real to me and very personal. And I was wondering if you could kind of unpack that a little bit for me.
Yeah, I can. Well, starting with the Sorokin character, he's named after my dear friend Billy William Sorokin, who actually happens to be a co-producer on this project, and I named the character W.A. William Abbott Sorokin after him. It's his tongue in cheek, and so with that statement goes a little self-deprecating humor on my side. Because I haven't made a film in a while. And so, with all the renowned filmmaking names that's dropped by this character, Sorokin, you know, he throws my name in there and like, whatever happened to that guy? He did it. Where did whatever happened to him? But anyway, let's move on. So, it was, like I said, self-deprecating humor. The latter part of it is just a way of articulating a belief that I have that I think is sound, which is here's a man who's dying, it's terminal with brain cancer, and he is talking about cherishing and taking advantage of. there are many ways of saying it. There are many people who've said it better than I, but it's like seize the day, right? It's that kind of thing, and just simply saying that procrastination. I'll do it tomorrow, and before you know it, as I think the great person once said, you run out of tomorrows, and so it's like
Hmm.
he's trying to say, don't procrastinate. Take advantage of the now, live for the now, don't have the regrets that you didn't do it when you could do it. And I believe in that. Like I said, I think it's sound. I believe in that, and I think that it's vital in the human condition and the human experience to um, uh, live and embrace and enjoy as much as one can the present. Live your life, enjoy your life, embrace what is vital and significant while you can, when you can, as opposed to looking back, and regretting what you have not done.
Where do you sit with regrets?
That's a big question, Nick. That's a big question. Um, I have many, but I don't have as many. I was gonna say as I should. I don't have as many as one would think. Given my age and my experience. But I've been married once and divorced. And the divorce itself was necessary. um, I don't regret that. And my ex-wife and myself were still friends, but one wishes that it could have worked out. I also thought when I made a movie for Disney in Hollywood, because I had paid some significant dues getting there. I thought that I now had arrived and that my professional life would be easier now that I'm working for one of the biggest film companies in the country, and that now finally my future films and future projects. I think you had mentioned to me the other day or something about how rough it is to raise money for films, and I knew that. But once I had the Disney job, I said, okay, that's over for me. It's not going to be rough any longer. And I regret that I didn't heed the fact that no, most likely, it's always going to be rough to raise
Yeah.
money. Unless you are one of the elite, superstar filmmakers. But other than that, it's always going to be. And in my mind, I thought it would be now forever easier. And so I regret that I didn't have the degree of hungry hustle then, that I had prior to that and that I had after that fact. But then in that whole period, I thought it was going to be easier. And I regret that I didn't, look at that more paranoidly. Another regret would be that, I didn't, uh, and I'm trying to compensate for that, it's been for years now, but that I didn't do more and sometimes past, years past, that I didn't do more, that my output wasn't more than it was. And so, over the past 4 years or so, I would say, I've been, working, producing, creating more. And so I would kind of regret that I haven't always felt that way. Yeah.
Well, I have to say, since we spoke briefly yesterday, I watched A Place in Time, I watched Sidewalk
Oh,
Stories, True Identity, and Hallelujah, and then read Real, because I wanted to sort of have that sequential run of sort of existing in your work and in your headspace. And it's been such a pleasure to get to inhabit that work as a viewer and then get to talk to you in this way. And I so appreciate everything that you have put out into the world as an artist, and I appreciate you as a human being. And it's been really meaningful for us to get to chat
oh,
today. So thank you.
Nick, man, you make if it's pot, you're making me blush here. I don't know if it's showing up, but damn, thank you, man. Listen, you're the best. I've always admired you, and being Hal Ashby. Yes, I know. Yeah, yeah. I think you're great. I think you're great, and it's my honor to know you and call you friend, and I thank you very much. I thank you very much indeed.
Thanks so much to Charles Lane for talking with me, and thanks to you for listening. Sidewalk Stories is available to stream on a bunch of major platforms. Please seek it out. You will not be disappointed. Also available to stream is the underrated True Identity. Plus, A Place in Time and Hallelujah are out there as well if you know where to look. This episode was produced by Myron Kaplan, and the theme music is by The Range. Nobody's Ever Asked Me That now has a Substack, so head to nobody'severaskedmethat.substack.com to check out all of our past episodes, plus subscribe to get access to exclusive audio and video content. Next week on Nobody's Ever Asked Me That, my guest is documentary filmmaker Kirsten Johnson.
I'm interested in uncertainty. So, just to be clear, I was raised both with deep uncertainty, which was, I was raised within this Seventh-day Adventist religion that said that Jesus is going to come again soon. There will be an apocalyptic event. The earth will be destroyed, and all those who are up in heaven will come back down to a renewed earth. So when was that going to happen?
Yeah.
When was that going to happen was like the fundamental uncertainty of my childhood.
That's next week on Nobody's Ever Asked Me That.